So for you guys, we're doing the creative eye illustration. And again, we're only going over the first part. There's 2 parts in total. Our task at hand to create a creative eye illustration with color. This is a 2-part project in which you'll illustrate the human eye, complete with values, and use that eye drawing as the foundation for making a creative eye illustration in color. For the color portion of the assignment, you may use pastels, color pencils, watercolors, markers, and ink. The following will be graded. Notes, which we are doing today on drawing eyes, completing the assigned practice sheet, drawing the human eye in practice, that is your part 1 final, your rough draft / watercolor tutorial. So I'll be giving you a tutorial on watercolor, and you're going to turn that in with your rough drafts for credit. Creating a colored illustration using the human eye, that's going to be your final for the unit. And reflection, which you're going to answer 2 questions. This is going to be a total of 20, 40, 50, 80, 90 points for this unit, and you can see the point values listed. A couple of things to cover first. We will go over some drawing fundamentals and holding the pencil. I will do that as we're taking notes. Our first part of the project, learn how to illustrate an eye in graphite. We're going to go over the various parts of the eye. We'll begin drawing by laying out our basic shapes. After we lay in our shapes, we'll be adding values and fleshing out our forms. Once our values in place, we'll be adding details such as eyebrows and eyelashes. Eyelashes are the very, very last thing that we do. Okay. So I'm getting ready to get started. So I have PDFs for everything. I would recommend that you look at the PDFs with your Chromebook and not your phone, because your phone's going to want to download the PDFs, and some of these PDFs are 18 and 20 megabytes, and I don't think you want to be eating up your memory. So I'm going to get up right now, so I'm going to use the yardstick to talk about the eye, and we're going to look at the different things that we're going to be drawing. The number 1 issue people have when drawing an eye is they draw it flat. And no matter how well you draw it, it's always going to be flat. So we need to understand the parts. So we look at the first graphic, that little pipe or tubing going above the eye, that is the eyelid following the contours of the eye. In the second one, I call the bottom lid of our eye as a dam, right? A dam holds back water, and then there's a walkway that people can walk on top of the dam. Well, if you look at your bottom eyelid, it's kind of the shape of a dam, and you have that walkway right on top. So I'll say this word a lot, and I want you guys to know what I'm talking about. And then a bit of it goes into the upper part of the eyelid, but you don't see it because your upper eyelid folds over it, and then you have eyelashes. And then the last thing is your eyelid casts a shadow on the eyeball. So people always talk about like the whites of the eyes. Well, our eyeballs aren't really white. They're like an off color. So we're going to address that when we're drawing too. So these are things to keep in mind when we're doing it. These are the notes. Okay. And I know my handwriting is bad, so I typed the notes. But today we're going to walk through how to do it step by step. I think direct instruction's better than just looking at the notes and copying them. So we're going to start that right now. If you guys want to use a small circle template, you can. Or you can just freehand it. It's okay. So we're going to get started. Okay. And again, I have PDFs for everything. And I'm going to zoom in here. I need someone to volunteer to be my camera person. So if I go off camera, could you just let me know? Aguilar, you're off camera. And we're also going to be looking at a photograph of an eye. When we start off drawing, we're not going to be looking at this eye. Okay, we're just going to show it for reference, but I'm going to show you a couple of different things. So let's start, okay, by labeling, okay, how to draw an eye. And make sure your name's on it. This is period 4. Okay. Now, the first thing we're going to do, zoom out a little bit, is we're going to draw a clock face. And again, if you guys want to borrow a circle template, that's fine. There's a couple up here in the corner.
Can I come to what's on your phone? What's the thing? Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so clock face. If you guys don't know what a clock face is, look up there. It's one in the room. So I'm going to put where my pupil would go. This is our iris. And I'm going to put in
Okay, thank you.
the time. So I got 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And I'm going to put all the other hours in between. So this is a foundation for drawing the iris as part of the eye. Okay. So again, we're looking at a iris. And one of the things that we want to avoid, okay, and I'm going to put avoid over here, is when we render drawing an eye, we want to avoid having our lines going in one direction. Okay. So you don't want to do this. So don't do this. And this is what I'm talking about. When we're shading, we don't want all our lines going in one direction. We want our lines traveling in 360 degrees. Okay. So this is a no. This is a yes. So we're talking about every part of the eye. So right now we're just talking about the iris. And I'm going to put that into practice up here. And this is the last time I'll use the circle guide. So again, if anybody wants a circle guide, they're right up here. Okay. So I'm going to indicate a pupil. And then we're going to talk about the different parts of an eye. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to just lightly indicate. And what these lines are going to do is they're going to help us make sure that when we're rendering in 360 degrees. Okay, that we avoid doing this and this, because this is what we really want to avoid. Now, before we start, our irises all have a color, whether it's a light brown, a dark brown, an amber, green, blue, we all have a value. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of the white paper. So I'm going to hold the pencil by the back, and I'm just going to put a light value to get rid of the white. Yeah. Thank you. So Brian, you're my official camera person today. Okay, so I just want to get rid of the white. And I want to just put a light value. I don't want to put a dark value because we're going to be drawing over it. The other thing, your iris is made up of a bunch of tissues. And those tissues connect on the ring that attach to your eyeball. And they also connect to the pupil. And when these fibers contract, your pupil gets smaller. When the fibers expand or pull, your pupil gets bigger to allow more light in. So where these tissues attach, you get clumps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a dark ring, or I'm just going to shade a ring around the edge of the iris. And I just want to put a value that's darker than the value we put down. I don't want to go too dark. Remember, the darkest part of our pupil, or our iris, is going to be the pupil. And there's also a ring right around the pupil because the tissue is attaching there too. Okay. So I'm basically setting up how to render an iris. I have my little hands in there that tell me the direction. I have my base value for the ring. I have my pupil. I'm going to blow up this eye really fast so you can see what I'm talking about. Too much. So here's that ring of tissue that's connecting, right? And then if you look over here, here's the other ring of tissue that's connecting. And then you have the fibers that appear lighter in between those two rings. So how do we draw this? How do we attack this when we're doing this? So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be drawing like this, like you're doing like a little flower, except my lines are going to be, it's going to be much smaller. It's going to be like this. Okay. It's going to be very, very tiny. And I want to go from the center of the pupil to my sections. And I'm going to rotate the paper because I can't take my hand off my wrist. And basically, this just allows me to move 360 degrees to not have my lines going in the same direction. And you can see where I'm starting to indicate the fibers, like in the image. And once I have those done, I'm going to go to the edge. And what happens is when these fibers touch like this, they form this shape right here. They form these like little Hershey kisses. Okay, and those Hershey kisses wrap around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a push and pull technique. And to push means you're going to push away from you. Pull means you're going to pull towards you. Okay. And I'm going to just use these little things that I've already drawn. And where it's comfortable to push, I will push. Where it's comfortable to pull, I will pull. So if I pull, I'm going to pull from the pupil. And then I think I'll bring in my special pencils I use for camera work. I have these pencils that aren't supposed to reflect light. So they make recording these demos a little bit easier. But I just want to come in here and then I just started adjusting my value. So I'm going to add a little bit darker value on that ring. And this is how you render an iris. And what I'm going to do right now after I do this last bit, and again, you could go back in and adjust your values. So I'm going to fix this right down here a little bit. And again, I'm holding the back of my pencil. And then I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to add a highlight. Okay. And again, I can see people that are not participating. I can't help you. Okay. If you guys are going to sit there and not participate, there's not much that I can do. So this is our iris. And why am I breaking it down to this extent? When we put everything together, you're going to combine a couple of different techniques. And what's going to happen is you're going to see your eyes are going to get better and better. Are your first couple of eyes going to be awesome? Probably not. But, you know, you practice 10, 12, 15 eyes, even if they're tiny, you're going to get better and better. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is our shape. And in the past, we've already established that it's really hard to accurately draw a curved object. So the best way to draw a curved object is to lay the angles. So we're just going to do a generic eye. So the top part, I'm going to have 3 different sections. I'm going to put a little area in here for our tear duct. Now the top has 3, the bottom has 2. The big mistake people make is they draw the dip of the eye in the center. And the dip of the eye is not in the center. The dip of the eye is always to a little bit to the outside, unless your angle of your face is drawn. Okay. So I'm going to draw that angle And we're going to do this twice. And then I'm going to do this one on over here. If you look at my notes, you don't see two of them, you see one. And that's because we just kept working on the one example. But I want you guys to have something to remember. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is the eyebrow. When you draw the eyebrow, I always start with the bottom shape because it's going to conform to your brow. And here's the mistake people make when drawing an eyebrow. The eyebrow, the angle, it's not a 90-degree angle, okay? But it's about 80 to 75 from the corner of the eye. Okay, that's about the angle you're going to see. And the problem is, a lot of people, when they're drawing, is they want to draw it like this, and that angle looks like that. Now, here's the problem. That's a yes. This is a no. Okay. If you draw your eyebrow there, what you're saying is your eyebrow is almost touching your ear. Okay, so if you look at your face, right, you'll see it, or the lines like this. So if you draw that eyebrow out like I just did, and where it says no, it's going to end almost to where your ear is. So you want to keep that in mind. This is probably the number one mistake people make when drawing an eyebrow. So what we're going to do now is we're going to repeat this again. We're going to go fast. And I'm going to show you how to turn this into an eye. And then we're going to work off a photograph. Okay, so top part's going to be 3 sections. Bottom part is going to be 2 sections. Once I have that in, what I want to do is I want to round it because our eyes are not angular, they're round. So I'm going to take these angles, I'm just going to add a curve. And now I have a curved object that is fairly accurately drawn with the dip in the right place. Now I'm going to add my parts. So I'm going to add that walkway that goes up into the top. And I'm going to add the walkway that goes into the bottom. And then where my tear duct's going to meet. Normally I don't draw it this dark, but for a diagram purpose. Here's a pop quiz. I want you guys to answer this question. Smith, why don't you answer this question really fast? What would be easier for me to draw as far as drawing an iris? Would it be easier for me to try to draw a near perfect circle in the exact location that I need it, at the exact size that I need it? Or would it be easier for me to look at the negative space on the left and the right of the iris and draw the negative space? Right? It is a good answer. It is extraordinarily hard to, 1, draw a spherical object. 2, to draw it at the exact size you need it and to put it in the exact location you need it is extremely hard. So when I'm looking at an eye, I'm going to look at the negative space that's made on the left side, and I'm going to look at the negative shape that is made on the right side. I'm going to draw those 2 shapes, and what happens is you get a pretty good iris. The other benefit is if you're drawing an eye at an angle, your iris is no longer circular. It's going to be elliptical. So if you just get used to drawing the negative shape, it doesn't matter what angle you draw the eye, it's going to be a lot easier to accurately draw the eye. Okay, and then I'm just going to put in where my eyelid goes. I'm not going to do the eyebrow. Okay, and so this is how we accurately draw an eye. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use this picture. Okay. So we're going to use this picture I have on the screen. I wish I would have used one without eyeliner, but it is what it is. So we're going to pretend she doesn't have that eyeliner, that black on the upper eye, and we're just going to draw the shape of the eye. Now, this person has what we call a round eye, which usually means European descent. So when we look at our shape of our eyes, the shape of our noses, a lot of it is going to be based on genetic markers from where our ancestors come from. And that's really going to influence the shape of your eyes. So if you have very strong European, Anglo-Saxon, English, French, Irish, Scottish, you're probably going to have a rounder shaped eye versus eyes that you might find from Asia or eyes that you might find from the African continent or even the American continent as far as Native Americans. So we have these genetic markers, okay? Now, we have so much blending over the last, couple hundreds of years that the genetic markers are all over the place. But we're going to look at this, and we're going to draw this one, and we're going to try to be accurate. So it's a round eye. So I'm going to draw that shape, that third shape on the top, and that fourth shape. I'm going to draw this one here. Okay, and when we start talking about shapes of eyes, a lot of times we'll talk about cat eyes. We'll talk about almond eyes, slanted eyes, round eyes. And what we're doing is we're just giving a name to a shape. And once I have my angles in, okay, again, I'm going to add and change those curves. And I don't care if some of those marks are still left on the top because those are going to become eyelashes anyways. So it really doesn't matter. What I do want to make sure is I don't draw my walkway too dark because that is the color of flesh. If we draw around the eyes too dark, those are going to be eyelashes. So it really doesn't matter. But I want to make sure that this part is a little bit lighter. And I'm going to come in here. Now, again, because of the eyelash, you're not going to see all of this. And then you could really see that tear duct. And because the eye is so round, you're going to find that most people don't have this. But you could see the bottom of the iris. So on most people's eyes, the bottom and top of the iris are going to be cut off. On this picture, it's just going to be the top. So again, I'm drawing that negative shape that I see here on the right. And then I want to draw that negative shape that I see here on the left. I'm going to indicate my pupil. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the shape of that highlight. Okay, and again, guys, I'm not judging anybody. I just want to see that you made the attempt, that you didn't immediately come in my classroom and put your head down and try to go to sleep because you're bound and determined not to do any work no matter what. I'm going to indicate lightly. If you draw this too dark, just take your eraser and lift. Okay, we're just going to indicate where that eyelid's going. And then I'm going to look at the top of the eyelid, and I'm going to judge that distance. And I'm going to draw that bottom line of the eyebrow. And always start with the bottom. I'm going to look at the angle. Okay. And I'm just going to loosely draw this shape. Okay, can anybody tell me what happens if I shave off your eyebrow? What's underneath it? Your skin, right? Is your skin white as the paper? So when you draw an eyebrow, here's one thing I want you to do after you're done drawing the eyebrow. I want you guys to take the flat side of your pencil, just hold it from the back. Okay. Again, we're doing our drawing fundamentals. And just put a nice light value. This is so when we start drawing the eyebrow, we don't have the white of the paper underneath it. Okay. And then Giovanni, I want you to answer this question. I see you paying attention. I thank you for that. Do shadows have shapes? Yeah. Can you recognize those shapes? Sometimes, right? Now, what I like to do is that shape's kind of a triangle with the top chopped off, or that shape's kind of a rectangle. I want to identify it, because if I can identify that shape, it makes it easier to draw. So everyone has this shape right here underneath their eyebrow going into where their nose is. This is the deepest part of your face. So this always has a shadow almost no matter what. You pretty much have to shine a flashlight on somebody for them not to have a shadow right there. And that shape of the shadow universally is pretty much the same on everybody. And this is one of the things that allows you to just draw out of your head, because you know everybody has this shape. On the side of the nose, it's this curve, and this curve kind of comes down into like a triangle curve. And we never, ever, ever draw a line underneath for our bottom eyelid. We always render our bottom of our eyelid. Now, the bottom of your eyelid, again, is like a dam. It's like this. This is the bottom of your eyelid, just like this. And it's round this way. So that means that it has to go this way, and you have a curve here. So if light's coming down, you're generally always going to have a shadow on that side. So when we're drawing eyes, we will draw a shadow here, and we will draw a shadow here, and your highlight is the part of the eyelid, the lower eyelid, that sticks out the farthest. Okay? So again, and then this top eyelid is kind of like a pipe. And that pipe is also round, which means shadows are going to be on this side and this side. Okay, so these are just some fundamentals that you got to look at when you're shading. So I'm going to give you guys a second. I want everyone to have their eye laid out, and then we're going to go about how do we shade the eye, how do we do the eyebrow, and then the eyelashes will be the very last thing that we do. So if you guys can finish up your drawing. Christian, you with me? Doesn't look like you're with me. Christian, it looks like this. And you're done? Okay. So let's focus on practicing then. I don't want to knock you out. Had to go to my backup coffee.
I'm good.
That looks awesome, Annie. If you need pens, let me know.
I need my other paper. My final paper.
Here you go. Ooh, and let me give you tape. Make sure you detack. Just tear it up. So you just want to tape it on the back of your paper. Annie, just want to tape it on the back of your paper.
Okay.
This way you can move it around when you're using the light table. Okay, so let's get back to the eye. All right, we're getting ready to shade. So I want to go in and I want to start putting some values in. And when I shade, I'm going to shade towards the direction that the shadow is going. So I always want to shade with the direction of the form. And I'm just gonna start putting it in. And what happens is you're gonna start seeing that this eye is gonna start taking a 3-dimensional shape. And again, we're looking at that photograph.
Copy.
Okay, and then the other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in and put that value into my iris like we did in the notes. I'm going to avoid my highlights. And then once I have this in, now I can start working technique. Okay, so I have all my parts laid in. I'm gonna put a light value for the walkway, a light value for my tear ducts, and then a light value for the eyeball. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm going to start doing my techniques. So I'm going to start putting in the little hands. I'm going to put in my little loops. And I'm going to avoid that highlight. Okay. I'm also going to add the shadow. So if you look at the photograph, you'll see a shadow that's right here. And I'll use my push and pull technique. If I want the pupil to be darker, I need to go to like a 4B or a 2B. Okay, so you can see how that's getting darker. And once I have all this kind of laid in, what I want to do now is I want to go in and I want to start shading my other pieces. So for my eyebrow, we're going to do hatching. So we're going to just do like this. Okay, and then on the other side, we're going to go this direction. And where these two meet, that's where we have this little peak or this little point. So I start off here nice and loose. And then, so if you look at the beginning of the eyebrow, you have some loose hairs, and then they get bunched up. And I'm just going to use hatching techniques. And I'm going to come from this side. And then you'll see a few loose hairs kind of pop up. And I'll draw those last. And then I will look, and you can see I put value down, but it still looks like there's white paper underneath. So I'll just add another value just to kind of make sure I don't have that white sticking out. And then I have these like little loose hairs that we all have. And I like doing the eyebrow because it gives me a value that I can look at. And I can start coming in and start shaping my shadows. So again, I'm just moving on the back of my pencil. The other mistake people make, and I'll show you guys right now, is the upper eyelid. People draw it as a line. The upper eyelid is a fold, and it casts a shadow. So if this is our brow, okay, and this is our eye and our eyelid, our brow is coming like this. And then here's the eyelid, here's the eye, and then the eyelid sticks out. So right here, you get a fold and you have this curve coming. So we are always going to have a shadow. We're always going to have a shadow right here. Okay, and this is the that's the eyebrow, right? So it's always coming like this and tucking in. So when we do it here, we have to keep that in mind that there is a shadow here. And that shadow is also going to follow our bone structure underneath. So I always want to keep that in mind when I'm doing this. I'm going to come in and put a light value for the skin because our skin is not white. I'm going to travel around in the same direction. I will come in now and I will fortify my shadow, which is going to be darker. I will bring that shape into here. I have a shadow on this side of the eyelid because it's wrapping, and then it hits the highlight, and then I have a shadow on this side and it goes into the highlight. And this is why we do our eyelashes last, because we want to see this. Okay, and again, I'm encouraging you guys to please pay attention and to work along. And I also have a shadow coming here. So can you guys all take a look, please, and pay attention? Because I see a few of you who are not. Okay, so if you see this, okay, you're going to see that I have my shadows in place. I can go in and make this a little darker. So I make my adjustments afterwards. If I feel that I need to have a little bit more value, like right here, I will come in and add it. But I'm just going to leave this as this part right here. And again, this is why we don't draw that lower eyelid. Okay, we just have it just like this. And then I'm going to bring in this value here. And you can see where I have that highlight in the picture, and you can see where it matches up. Just because I followed the shapes of my shadows, that highlight, right, it's right there. And I could come in and darken this in a bit. So now I got to add my eyelashes. And there's a few things I want to point out before we do our eyelashes. So one of the things I'm going to draw is an eye from the side. Now, here's the thing. So here's our eye from the side. Eyelashes curl and they get bunched up, just like this. And they're going to bunch up and they're going to come out. Eyelashes curve. So when we're drawing eyelashes on the eye, what happens is these curves are going to be coming up. Oh. When I have this here, okay, and come here first before you leave. I want to draw these eyelashes coming in a curve. So I'm going to be drawing like this. And same thing with the other side because they have the curve. And when they are going off into the side, okay, they clump. And that's where we get this, this dark part right here. Because this is where those eyelashes are going to collide. So I just want to indicate, and I'm just going to put that main shape in there. And it gets thinner here because A, we have fewer lashes as we go towards our nose. And the angle that we're seeing is going to be different. The other thing I'm going to do is right on top, I'm going to draw these arches just like this. And these arches are where I'm going to be drawing the eyelashes from. Okay. And I'm going to draw those little arches, and they're very tiny, okay? Especially because I'm drawing very, very small. And those parts, you know, you're barely going to see it. And then I'm going to come here. And I'm going to be drawing, okay? So when I do this, I am just going to be working out, and I don't want to draw the eyelashes as individuals. I want to clump them. So I'll come through and I'll thicken them up a little bit, and then I'm just going to have very few on this side. And then on the bottom, it's going to be even less. In fact, I'm going to sharpen my pencil real fast before I go into it. And here's the thing. If I'm drawing a portrait or painting, I know that the eyelashes are going to be the very last thing that I'm going to do. And I will literally practice eyelashes for like 10 or 15 minutes. Because the one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to be spending hours and hours and hours on a portrait only to screw it up on the very last thing. Okay, so I'm going to conclude the video right now because that's playing.